Metroid 2 is a really bad game. It is not great. And I'll be completely honest, this is not my favorite game in the franchise, but I'll get to that. Okay, so this is an addendum to my first two Metroid videos. I recently made two videos about the first two games in the Metroid series, and I feel like I need to make a couple of modifications. I don't want to erase the videos because I think I make some good points, but I do think I was needlessly harsh and I want to address that. In Metroid 1, I had some criticisms, but concluded that this is a great game, it's just a little too old for me to appreciate at this point in my life. I stand by that. But I don't think I did enough to advocate for the game. It truly is a great game, despite my reservations. The game plays as a more isolative, semi-horror game. Did they succeed in being terrifying? No, but I can see the groundwork for things that would evolve further on in the series. In my Metroid 2 video, I wasted no time in dumping shit all over it. I concluded that this was an objectively bad game and was desperately in need of a remake. I was wrong. Kind of. I think some of my criticisms weren't completely unwarranted. I think it is a very flawed game, and I think it is not very accessible. But I think I neglected to focus on some of the more intentionally good moments of this game. Since I wrote the script for the Metroid 2 video, I played through it again, and this time with a map open on my screen so I knew where to go. This makes a huge difference. Playing through the game with a better state of mind and the ability to direct myself when necessary made the entire experience a lot less tedious. Plus, I'm currently balls deep inside Samus Returns and AM2R, so I'm getting thoroughly absorbed in Metroid 2, lore, gameplay, themes, map design, etc. It's really impossible for me not to find the good in this game. First of all, I played this game with a map open, and goddamn it made a massive difference. This game went from tedious and irritating to a fantastic adventure. Look, I know this is somewhat divisive, especially among Metroid fans, but I really don't like getting lost. It is not a fun experience for me, not in video games or in real life, and I have a poor sense of direction in the first place, and I really don't have endless time to wander around or throw into any game at all, given just the chaotic, busy nature of my personal life. Getting lost isn't fun, but exploring is a lot of fun. The line between the two blurs a lot, especially in Metroidvanias, but I think there is a distinction, and that distinction makes a big difference for me and my personal enjoyment of games in general. For this reason, I don't tend to view bigger as better. In fact, it's rarely the case. Some of my favorite games take a lot and pack it into a smaller map. Those games, I think, are masterpieces. That brings me to Metroid 2. This game has a lot of limitations and clunkiness. Granted, so did the first, but because of this I was really quick to write it off as a lesser adventure. It is smaller, granted, but they go out of their way to add a lot in this tiny adventure. For instance, the semi-linear nature of this adventure does actually cut down on some of the aimless wandering. True, without a map it still happens, but it is relatively controlled and within smaller subsections. Still, several areas included massive caverns with Metroids hidden in the corners and almost hidden pathways throughout them, so I think some of my criticism still stands. But I think I was overly harsh. Playing with a lap allowed me to get some of the basic guidance that allowed me to appreciate how masterful the map design actually was. Just view how they utilize their graphics. Samus is bigger in the screen, much bigger. The focus is on you, and the zoomed-in camera capitalizes on the claustrophobic nature of this mission. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what's coming. You do know that there are many dangerous Metroids in this area, and you need to find them. Or maybe they will find you first. Some of this was lost on me, as my map told me when to expect Metroids and where they were, but the subtle environmental storytelling was not lost on me. Much more so than the first game, they told a lot through quiet enemy placement and background images. Just the way the enemies become more scarce as you proceed deeper and deeper into the caverns of the Metroids, as you leave the more life-filled areas of other biomes and reach deep into territory completely monopolized by the Metroids. This is their planet, not yours, but the deeper you go, the more acutely aware of this fact you get. Even the relatively generic Metroid encounters become more difficult as you are now playing on their turf. As I mentioned in my previous video, the combat felt lazy and claustrophobic rather than intentional. I don't think that was fair. It was definitely influenced by the limitations of their hardware, and it was frustrating at times, but I think it was intentional, and I think I grew to appreciate it after the fact. It wasn't game-breaking. On 2 occasions, I was low on health and missiles and desperate for a relief station. But even in those moments, it felt reasonable. It felt like I had bitten off more than I could chew, not that the game was just fucking me over. To be honest, I have a low frustration tolerance with games. I'm aware of this. Unfortunately, it means I am likely to criticize a game when I get frustrated, even if it isn't completely warranted. In this case, with some distance between me and my playthrough, I think I really appreciate and even like those moments in which I was desperate and scrounging for resources. It brings to mind similar arguments that people make about the Resident Evil series, and one of the main reasons I dislike those games in general. I do not like games that rely on a lack of resources and health to instill, quote, fear. It's not scary to have an unreasonable amount of resources. It's just frustrating. But Metroid utilizes this in a reasonable way. It isn't constant, it isn't overused, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It pops up just often enough to be concerning and scary and to remind you that you are in a dangerous situation. This was very, very well done, especially for a game that is literally older than I am. Another huge complaint I had with this game was the music. In my original video I referred to it as clunky and abrasive. Future Blubberbutter, go ahead and roll that clip. The music. The music is really, really disappointing to me, actually. After the amazing music from the original Metroid, I had much higher hopes. The second game's music honestly felt like an afterthought. Like, it's not all bad, but it just felt slapped on, like in addition to the original game. I definitely thought that at first. The music did not work for me. However, I've been listening to the music a lot as I've edited these videos and replayed the game, and now playing through the remakes, I'm seeing more remixed versions of this music, and I think I need to walk back some of those excessively harsh statements. The music starts off a little more adventurous as you gain some headway and arrogantly charge through your mission of killing all the Metroids. Then you hear some of the more obnoxious tunes of the labyrinthian tunnels that seem to mock you as you climb and crawl, or I guess roll, your way through, finding new caverns you need to dissect. Some areas are relatively silent, with general noise in the background, just to remind you that it is almost silent. Even the unpleasant fanfare the Metroid's approaching adds to my irritation or concern at starting the encounter. I think a lot of the general noises were needlessly clashing and abrasive, but I can forgive some of that just due to the technical limitations. Originally, I rolled my eyes at the intro song of Metroid 2. I thought it was very bad. Looking back on it though, I don't think I could have been more wrong. The first game sounds intense, apprehensive, dangerous. The second one sounds terrifying. True, it builds on to be an actual song, but I think it fits the themes of this game. That theme being, of course, genocide. This game is very heavy. You are literally tasked with exterminating an entire species. You are commanded to erase the existence of an entire species on their own home planet, all because the Federation was scared that their intended bioweapon was utilized against them. Those are some surprisingly heavy themes, especially for a Game Boy game. That screeching of the opening theme really fits here. If Metroid 1 was inspired by Alien, this game is Aliens. The first game is a military game. You are, against the odds, tasked with fighting back against a fortress of powerful enemies and destroying their very own dangerous weapon. The last portion of the game does play out as near horror could be for the NES era. But Metroid 2 takes that intimidating threat and tells you to go to their own home planet. a planet they thrive on, rather than just a lab that they broke out of. This adventure is far more deadly than your initial exposure to them. Keep in mind, the Federation, well actually, based on our 2 adventures, the Federation seems incredibly incompetent. They seem to fail at everything, despite having far more resources, but whatever. The first mission, their military failed against a fortress, and thus you were sent. This one was much worse though, and I only barely touched on it in the video. According to the booklet, the galaxy was terrified at the threat of Metroids. The government and civilians, as rumors spread. This is basically the threat of nuclear war on a multiplanetary scale, so they send researchers to make sure the danger is in check. The researchers send a distress call and are never heard from again, so they send a rescue team whose only goal is to get them and get the hell out. They no longer want to study these terrifying creatures, but the rescue team also goes missing. So this time they send a specialized armed unit with the best weapons they have, and their goal is to just figure out what the hell happened, get the survivors, and get out. And then they go missing too. This is a terrifying setup. They just want to leave the planet alone. They are no longer interested in studying it, and they are being killed too fast to get out. And that is when they send you. This is the second time they have no other option, and there's nothing to do but to task bounty hunters who are willing to go on an apparent suicide mission to kill these enemies. With this in mind, the clunkier and more frustrating elements of this game are more palatable. This game is supposed to be more horror than adventure, but it's still supposed to be fun. Despite their clear limitations, I think they succeeded, and within that, the conclusion is even better. Your mission is to kill and continue killing, and it reaches its conclusion when you, Samus, decides that you are not willing to kill a literal newborn to complete this mission. The game plays a hopeful, thoughtful tune as you climb out of the tunnels that just seconds ago could have been your grave. Now, peacefully, you take the last creature of its entire species and climb to the life-filled surface and leave this deadly planet behind. The ending is immaculate. Given the strict hardware limitations of the Game Boy, they told a very compelling story without any dialogue or text. I feel bad that I was so harsh on this game originally. I was really missing out on what was objectively an incredible experience, and how great this game really was. Yes, like its predecessor, it is very dated, but I think this one actually holds up. I highly recommend it. Unlike 1, where I say it's worth a look but is easily replaced by Zero Mission, I actually think this game holds up on its own. I will not delete my original video. I think it's good to note how people might view this game at first look, but I do think there's a lot more to this game than myself and many others give it credit. This game truly is a masterpiece.